Doesn't it feel good when the Philadelphia Eagles have a dominating win, especially when it comes against a division rival? Well, that's exactly what the Philadelphia Eagles got on Sunday afternoon, defeating the New York Giants by a final score of 38-20 and rising to 6-2 on the season. Welcome to the Birds Nest Podcast. I'm Joe Donahue. Thank you so much for joining us. This was really the Eagles' first complete game of the season, playing all 60 minutes of football, firing on all cylinders, and playing well in pretty much any phase of the game that you look at. The stats across the board, the Eagles, for the most part, were very dominant over the New York Giants. And the first thing that stands out when you take a look at this game is the resurgence of the run game. Saquon Barkley is back, and he had 14 carries for 150 yards, including, to get things started today, a 65-yard touchdown run that came 2 plays into the game. The Eagles had barely burned 17 seconds off the clock, and Saquon Barkley had already found the end zone. And this was huge for the Eagles. It was a real pace setter, because when the Eagles' run game is working well, the Eagles' offense on the whole works well. Because the Eagles' offense is really designed, it seems, to rely very heavily on the run. The Eagles use the run in ways that other teams don't. The Eagles use the run really to set up an effective passing game. So when teams are able to shut down a run game, the Eagles' pass game really starts to struggle a little bit. And that has been evident over the course of the last several weeks. That's also why, in my opinion, all of the Eagles' first 5 wins have felt way closer than this one. But we can talk about the Philadelphia Eagles' run game, and we can talk about how well Saquon did, but a huge part of the run game is the offensive line. I keep coming back to this. Jeff Stoutland, who is the offensive line coach, head of Stoutland University. Jeff Stoutland also has the title of run game coordinator, and the offensive line plays a huge role in executing well in the run game. And there was definitely some concern going into this game due to the fact that Cam Jurgens was out. This meant that Brett Toth was going to be on the offensive line. But this week, unlike the last several, Brett Toth stepped in as backup center. And I think he's found his home there, because Brett Toth and the rest of the offensive line were really playing very good football. They were creating a lot of time in the pocket. They were allowing for the run game in particular to be well executed, to allow Saquon to have an average of 10.7 yards per carry, to allow him to break past that line of scrimmage, to be able to block guys. That was something that was really missing over the course of the last several weeks, and the fact that the offensive line was in a position where they were creating that is huge. So much so that it wasn't just Saquon that had a really good day in the run game. Tank Bigsby had 9 carries for 104 yards. That's an average of 11.6 yards per carry. And while Tank Bigsby didn't have a 65-yard rushing touchdown, he did have a 29-yard run late in the game that really helped make sure that this game was in the Eagles' favor. Jalen Hurts spoke about the importance of the run game in the offense and how important it was to be efficient in both the run and the pass game following today's game.
Very important. Very important. I think we've had a desire to stay on schedule and be better in first and second down, really first down. And man, those guys up front, they played their tails off. Really good in the combo blocks and getting movement in the run game. And then Saquon being Saquon, when he had those opportunities, he took the most, made the most of them and take advantage of them. And then Tank coming in and running as hard as he did. I think those things kind of when you're able to run the ball efficiently like that, it kind of gives you a flow a bit. And so proud of how we were able to run the ball, and I'm proud of how we were able to make plays and win in the red zone and take advantage of those opportunities there too.
Interestingly enough, the last time that the Eagles have had two 100-plus yard running backs in a game was more than a decade ago. You have to go back to the Chip Kelly years. In week 16 of 2013, the Philadelphia Eagles played the Chicago Bears. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles dropped a 50-burger on the Bears. 54-11 was the final score in that game. But in that game, the Eagles had 289 rushing yards. LaShawn McCoy had 18 carries for 133 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. And Bryce Brown had 9 carries for 115 yards, including 1 touchdown. So the Philadelphia Eagles haven't had this kind of performance from 2 running backs in more than a decade. And that really speaks volumes about the Eagles' offensive line performance. And that's also manifest in the passing game as well. Jalen Hurts was 15 for 20 for 179 yards. He had 4 passing touchdowns as well. So that really was a great stat line for him. Now, Jalen Hurts did have 4 sacks, which is not a good look. It was fewer sacks than Jackson Dart had, but still not a good look, and definitely some opportunity to clean that up. A good portion of the sacks were not the offensive line's fault, I will say that. They were a byproduct of Jalen Hurts not getting rid of the football quickly enough, which is something that he needs to try to do, including one very costly one that set up a 2nd and 31 when Jalen Hurts was sacked for a loss of 16 yards. That was not a good look for Jalen Hurts there in that situation. But in the passing game, Jalen Hurts, other than those sacks, did really, really well. A.J. Brown was out of the game this week as well, which meant that the Eagles had to rely on other receivers, and the rest of the receiving corps did a great job as well. Standout, of course, is Devontae Smith, who is 6 catches on 9 targets for 84 yards. Devontae Smith is underrated outside of Philadelphia, given the fact that he plays in A.J. Brown's shadow as technically wide receiver 2, but he is arguably the best wide receiver 2 in the league, and realistically, today was his opportunity to show that. Additionally, Jahan Dotson had an incredible grab leaping over a Giants defender to be able to haul that ball in, and what seemed to be an impossible catch. Jahan Dotson was 1 for 2 on the day in the receiving game, but it was that 40-yard touchdown pass that really stood out. Saquon Barkley also had a little bit of an appearance in the receiving game. He had 4 catches on 5 targets, including a receiving touchdown, 24 yards in the receiving game. So he did have that going on. But today was National Tight End Day. No joke. And because of that, Dallas Goedert went 3 for 3 in the receiving game for 28 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. So happy National Tight End Day to one of the best tight ends out there in Dallas Goedert, because he also had an opportunity to shine. But you look across the board and you see all of the team stats, and you see how this game really was the Philadelphia Eagles game pretty much from start to finish. The Philadelphia Eagles were 3 for 3 in the red zone. They had 427 total net offensive yards. They held the ball for 33 minutes and 15 seconds, winning the time of possession battle. They had a monstrous 276 rushing yards on the day, as we've already mentioned. And the Eagles only had to punt the ball once over the course of the game. Nick Sirianni had some thoughts specifically about the red zone.
We've been good in the red zone, like I said, for the past 4 years. I think we've been in the top 10 every year, and been, I think, in the top 5 a couple of those years. But it's a group effort. as everything is. Who's in charge of the run game? Group effort. Who's in charge of third down? Group effort. Who's in charge of first and second down? Group effort. Who's in charge of the red zone? Group effort. And so, but ultimately, Kevin has to call the plays that he feels that give us the best chance to win there, and succeed there. He's got to be able to adjust and adapt if you get behind the sticks down there. I think we've done a good job of being efficient down there, though, because it is hard to convert on third and long down there. And what we've done has been efficient in both the pass and the run down there, even though maybe we haven't had the 10-yard runs or anything down there, but we've kept the ball moving forward. And Jalen's played really good football down there. And Dallas has obviously been really good down there.
Again, the Philadelphia Eagles really controlled the game offensively. And that made the defense's job this week, which, remember, last week was a little bit more of a challenge because the offense couldn't seem to stay on the field for very long. The defense's job this week was eminently easier. The Eagles defense did hold the New York Giants to 246 total net offensive yards. Jackson Dart was 14 for 24 on the day for 193 yards and 1 passing touchdown. He was sacked 5 times. While there were no turnovers over the course of the game, the Philadelphia Eagles defense did almost force a turnover. However, on replay review, they determined that the hand of Jackson Dart was moving forward just enough with control to cause it to be an incomplete pass. The Eagles' defense was completely dominant at the line of scrimmage, holding the Giants to just 68 total rushing yards. The leading rusher was Tracy for them, 10 carries for 39 yards. We also had Jackson Dart have his own rushing touchdown. Cam Scattaboo, unfortunately, was injured midway through the game. He left the game with what Ian Rappaport reported as a dislocated ankle. So certainly we hope all the best for him. He definitely has a very promising career. And while it's a division rival, we don't celebrate injury here. So hopefully he is okay and he is able to bounce back from this as quickly as possible. The Eagles did have some struggles in the passing game covering receivers. There were multiple scenarios where the Eagles defense was leaving guys open. But by the end of it, the Eagles allowed a touchdown late in the game simply because at the end of it, the Eagles had the game pretty well in the bag. Even the Eagles special teams had a really good showing. Will Shipley almost had 100 return yards over the course of the game. He had 3 kickoff returns for 99 yards, which, again, is incredible because I remember times when the Eagles special teams was not performing very well. Jake Elliott was 1 for 2 in the field goal game today. He drilled a 40-yarder and then missed a 58-yarder, doinking it off the upright. And this is where we have to acknowledge something else that was not great about this game, and that was, in fact, the officiating. There were 2 situations where both the Eagles and the Giants could dispute a inadvertent whistle was blown. The first was on that Jake Elliott field goal that he missed. Again, it was a 58-yarder. I was listening to that portion on the radio broadcast, and you could very clearly hear a whistle that was being blown, and it was sailing through the air.
Elliott boots it up, and it's off the post. No good.
And whenever a whistle's blown, the play is dead. So that does create a little bit of confusion. Same thing later in the game. The Eagles did run a tush push, and that crossed the line to gain. But then the ball was knocked out of Jalen Hurts' hands and was recovered by the New York Giants. However, almost as soon as Jalen Hurts had crossed the line to gain, the officials blew the whistle, which killed the play.
Tush push. Hurts leans forward. Ball is taken away from Kayvon Thibodeau. Did they blow the whistle?
Now, it seemed like the Giants were having an argument with the officials saying that forward progress had not been stopped. The Giants did try to challenge that play. It is not reviewable whether or not forward progress was stopped because that is an officiating judgment call. But the fact that there were 2 inadvertent whistles, even though they negatively impacted each team, is not a good look for the NFL. Now, the Eagles did have Saquon Barkley leave late in the game due to injury. He was officially marked as questionable to return. He understandably did not return because by that point in the game, the Eagles were already up over the Giants by multiple scores. But that also points to the fact that this upcoming week is a bye week for the Philadelphia Eagles, and it could not come at a better time because the Philadelphia Eagles in this situation, they are a little bit beat up in certain areas, but they also want to use this time to continue their self-scouting process, to continue to grow from the things that occurred over the course of these first several weeks. We want to see the Philadelphia Eagles continue to have these kinds of dominating wins. We want to see whether or not this was a fluke or whether or not this was the harbinger of a real serious run game return. The Eagles have a long bye week actually coming up because in addition to being off, the following week they'll play Monday Night Football. So the Philadelphia Eagles playing against the Green Bay Packers on Monday Night Football is going to be a really, really exciting game. The Eagles have plenty of time to make sure that they're continuing to put themselves into positions where they're going to be able to succeed, continue to learn from these first several weeks, and be able to grow so that we can continue to have these kinds of dominating games. Because the first several weeks of this season, I've really felt like I've been watching these games, following these games from the edge of my seat, and there have not been games where I've really felt comfortable. This was the first game where for most of the game, I felt comfortable that we were going to win. Until then, the Philadelphia Eagles are 6-2, still sitting on top of the NFC East, and Eagles fans everywhere can enjoy, for the first time this season, a complete victory. But as always, let me know what you think in the comments below. What were your thoughts about today's game? What got you excited? What areas of concern do you still have? Let me know. And thank you so much to everyone for tuning in to the Bird's Nest Podcast. You can support the Bird's Nest Podcast by liking and subscribing to Bird's Nest Media right here on YouTube, as well as by sharing to your social media pages. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, and iHeartRadio. Please visit birdsnestmedia.com for additional Eagles and NFL coverage. And if you feel so inclined to support us in a different way, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description below or at birdsnestmedia.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's go Eagles!